Thanks everyone for coming out. I think we gather a lot, but I think because of the pandemic, at least for me personally, I really appreciate these moments a lot more now. Probably maybe took them for granted. As a kid, I definitely was dragged here and had to sit here. Speaking of which, for all the parents who have young kids, out that door there's some goodie bags and some coloring sheets if the films don't hold their attention. Auntie Akira, you can also go and do some coloring. I know you have high standards for film, so hopefully this meets your standard. But yeah, I think especially now as a parent, I just know how hard weekends are. Downtown LA isn't the easiest place to get to, so just really appreciate all of you for coming out. I also think I was looking forward to today because I think it's always a gathering of people from different parts of my life at screenings, and so I'm always in a very proud way like to kind of show off our community to my other friends and fellow filmmakers. So thank all of you for being here. Can we cue the sure? Not that one. Okay. I think I also want to recognize my mom, Karen Ishizuka, who's also this is actually my parents' anniversary. So congratulations to them. And we're waiting for the picture, but we'll see. Well, actually, I think both of these films wouldn't have been possible without generous funding. So the first film, Watase CAFÉ, is a Little Tokyo Service Center production. It's LTSC's kind of probably 50% of us had been employed by LTSC in the best way. For me, it was one of the first jobs. I interned with them in undergrad and I had my first kind of real job at LTSC. And so also for the Benkyodo film, definitely want to thank the Henry and Tomoe Takahashi Charitable Foundation, the Japanese American National Museum, the Center for Asian American Media, the JA Community Foundation, and our fiscal sponsors, the JCCCNC and Visual Communications. So without their generous funding, neither of these films would have been possible. Wanted to share with you this photo. I think I'm currently going through a midlife crisis, so I just want to put that out there. And so yeah, I'm not alone. I know some of y'all are with me in that. But I think one of these, I think it's really hitting me, or especially seeing everyone here today, right? Like there's probably 3 generations in this room alone. But I think a big theme of today will be kind of multi-generational community. And as you can see, I've been part of the community since birth. The good-looking chubby kid in the middle, well, they're all good-looking, but the chubby kid in the middle is me, and that's my mom, who I just introduced. And then that's my friend Kelly and his mom Charlotte, and that is Evelyn Yoshimura and Naomi, who are here today. I kind of, I think, and Naomi, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I think this photo meant something when I was little, but it means something different now that I'm a parent. I think we were always at the kids' table, right? And then we graduated to youth, right? And people are always looking at us as like, we need you as, the younger people. And now when they say younger people, they don't look at us anymore. And so, I think it is something special, and I do think that there is this wisdom that we always are told that you get as you get older, but you don't really realize that until you get older. And it's not wisdom like we know anything or I know anything more, but I think it's an appreciation for the little things. It's appreciation for moments like this that we know that aren't going to come that often, right? But I think I wanted to, and then now that we are, there's babies in the room, there's babies being born, this week in the community. Some people aren't here because they're pregnant. And so I think it's a really more meaningful scenario for me to be here now that I'm a parent. And I could really understand the hopes and dreams of not only the Nisei and Issei, but especially the Sansei, who, for me, really laid the groundwork for what we're doing for my own career. So I always say, I think everyone knows that I'm a product of my parents, Karen Ishizuka and Bob Nakamura, but I'm very much a product of my aunties and uncles, who all of you a lot of them are here today. So I just want to express, my deep gratitude for all of you who've, not only raised me, but mentored me as a filmmaker, as a community member. And I just want to say I understand on a much deeper level and emotional level what you've done for me and for my generation a lot more now that I'm a parent. But one person, in particular, I wanted to recognize tonight is because, Evelyn Yoshimura really initiated the Atomic CAFÉ film. She was kind of, I think, subtly hinting at we should do a film on that. Then it became more of a you should do this film, and then it became you should have done it a while ago, just do it. But again, this film would not have, the Atomic CAFÉ film would not have happened if it wasn't for Evelyn, who was executive producer on the film. Yeah. But on a personal level, I think she's always, I think Evelyn always made time to invite me to lunch and just check in on me, and I think she's a perfect example of a loving auntie and a badass activist, right? And that's kind of the auntie of our dreams, right? But I think, again, I appreciate, now that I'm a busy parent, who, trying to have a career, really appreciate and it wasn't like I would initiate. She would be the one that hey, let's have lunch, and she would really check in on me and really help me navigate my place in the community. And I feel like, her as well as a lot of people envision what I could do in the community even before I could. And so, I just want to thank you. And just really want to thank you. And I'm making a habit of crying at these things. This is the parent emotions, I guess. And for believing and envisioning in me and the role I can serve in the community even before I did. So really want to thank you. And the cool thing is the generations continue. So I'd like to bring up my son Prince and my daughter Malaya. I'd like to invite Kisa and Genzo, Evelyn's granddaughter and grandson. And so Genzo and Prince are homies from Saishin Dojo over the summer. And so I wanted to present this lei to Evelyn. So again, Evelyn, thank you again for everything you've done for me, and hope continue to make you proud. And so I think I've gotten emotional enough on the mic now that we'll screen the 2 films, and then we'll come up. We have special guests, Atomic Nancy and Eryn Kimura, the producer of the Benkyodo film. Yeah, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much.
We're now going to transition into a conversation around these 2 wonderful films that we just saw. So just want to know, as Tad mentioned earlier, there are some activities for the kids out in the lobby if you need to. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I want to acknowledge before we get started that we really wanted to have Akira Boch here, who is the director of both these films and a former director of the Watase Media Arts Center here at JANM. He's in Japan right now, so wasn't able to come, but just want to thank him and know that his influence on these films and the Frank H. Watase Media Arts Center has been just so important. So thank you, Akira. Yes. So now I'm going to introduce the panels, today our panel is going to be moderated by Sean Miura, who is the producer and curator of Tuesday Night CAFÉ, which is the longest running Asian American public art series, and a new JANM staff member, we're so lucky, a member of the team developing the forthcoming JANM core exhibition here. He will be joined by, of course, Tadashi Nakamura, as we mentioned, the director of the Frank H. Watase Media Arts Center at JANM. And I just want to note that the Media Arts Center produces documentaries, exhibition, media, and video life histories that support JANM's mission and work. So important to the core of what we do here. He was named one of CNN's Youngest People Who Rock for being the youngest filmmaker at the 2008 Sundance Film Festival, and listed as one of the top rising Asian American directors on IMDb. So we're so lucky to have him. We also have here, all the way from the Bay Area, Eryn Kimura, she, they pronouns, who is a mixed media artist and cultural organizer and producer, and of course the producer of Benkyodo, the Last Manju Shop in J-Town. And then we are also joined, we're so lucky, by Nancy Sekizawa, who I feel like I don't need to introduce after that film, but also known as Atomic Nancy, whose family ran the Atomic CAFÉ, and now for over 35 years has been a certified drug, alcohol, and addiction specialist here in Los Angeles. So with that, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Sean. We're in for a real treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy. Can we have the panelists out? I think I've talked enough today. So I'm gonna start just with Tad, Nancy, and Eryn. And a round of applause. Check. All right, so I just want to start by acknowledging and apologizing that you didn't get to catch the very end of the short. Unfortunately, there was a technical difficulty, but you will be able to catch the rest of that on the festival circuit.
Yeah, again, sorry, the film obviously isn't supposed to cut out like that. The inner Bob Nakamura in me is screaming, yeah, I think the film is currently doing the festival circuit, and hopefully we'll be able to see the last couple seconds.
Those seconds are worth it, so keep an eye out. So with that, I just want to thank you both for that incredible film that we just saw, Benkyodo, and Nancy for your incredible words in that short. Every time I watch it, I'm reminded of what an incredibly generous and also hilarious person you are. And I think that we all got to experience that, and I'm excited we get to experience that with you in person. Just to kick this off, let's go backwards while the Benkyodo film is still in our minds. Eryn, can you talk a little bit about how you came to this project and what sort of drove you to it?
Yeah, so one thing I will say is apparently Mercury's in Gatorade, which means that like all communications and nothing works out. So that blip was the planets, y'all.
Universe.
Just need to name that. Secondly, yes, my name is Eryn. I grew up in San Francisco. I'm a 5th generation San Franciscan. Grew up in J-Town. Like through all the youth programs and playing basketball out there, and then also my family's businesses were there as well. But Uncle Rick was Uncle Rick to me. I found out maybe in 2020. My dad was like, yeah, I think Uncle Rick is gonna throw in the house. And I said, oh, really? is he now? So I knew in my head, my North Star for everything was just to make sure that we could capture this in some way. The way I look at the world, the lens through which I'm looking is understanding that like every moment is absolutely miraculous. Like, what are the odds that we all exist here together? Oh my gosh. So I understood, I was like, oh, this is big. And I know Uncle Rick and Uncle Bob are like super like, oh no, it's cool, like, we're just gonna close our doors after like a century, it's no big deal, like we're just gonna go super quiet, like no one's gonna talk about it, it's totally okay. And I'm like, no, it's not. So my big thing was making sure we capture that we articulate that we archive that. And so, yeah, that was the North Star.
I think like I always have nightmares that businesses are just gonna do that they're gonna be like, oh no, it's not that big a deal. Like we're just gonna close.
Oh yeah.
A community institution is fine. It's
Yeah,
chill.
yeah, no big deal. Yeah, I'm just sob by myself.
Tad, can you talk a little bit about how you came to the Atomic project beyond Evelyn forcing you to do it?
Well, I think for us in Little Tokyo, I mean the Atomic is this like urban legend, and I think for those of us, my generation who are too young to experience it, it's something you just always hear about, and so I think it was, but then at the same time, Nancy is I know Nancy as Atomic Nancy, and by the way, Nancy has like the best voice in LA, so I just know, yeah. And so, I think it was something that, one of these urban legends, and it was also too, I think for me, really cool because it was this like underground spot, right? And I was probably, in my 20s when I first started to like, oh, I wish I would, could experience that. And so I think when we knew that the building was going to be demolished for the metro station, I think that was finally the time to do it. But yeah, I think for me, it was really just an honor to actually like learn more and more and get the story, but at the same time, to get to know Zen, get to know Nancy, and I guess the story too is that I have to bring kind of Akira Boch, the co-director, in the room. I think we started this film a long time ago when we kind of first heard that the Metro Center was going to be built, and it was for those of you who know me, like we actually started filming this film before Melee Murals, which premiered like in 2016. So actually it wasn't until the pandemic that Akira, had time on his hand and was really, at that point we're just like, we gotta get this done. So luckily Akira had the time and really just kind of handed it over to Akira who edited and kind of took it across the finish line. But I think it's, unfortunately, this is great that we get to screen it today because it's the first time we've been able to screen in person because, unfortunately the film came out in 2020. But because of that, it played all over the country, even got picked up as to be part of the PBS Short Film Festival. So in a way, it was able to be seen by people across the country and across the world.
Nancy, can you talk a bit about being approached and like what it's nearly 30 years since the Atomic has closed. You get an email or a call. What's your reaction to the story of the Atomic Cafe kind of becoming like the subject of a film, and also just, I think, as a community, a lot of people starting to celebrate it?
Well, it was Evelyn. It was you. And I think with Little Tokyo Service Center, thank you, first of all. They didn't want, they were going to do something like like little memorabilia, like this Hollywood star on the ground, And so Evelyn says, hell no. And then all of a sudden I start meeting Tad and Akira, and people were just coming around just wanting to know about the Atomic. And I thought, like, nobody really, after we closed, it was it, bye. It was just like, I didn't think that it would just drum up so much interest, right? But then my daughter started like saying, well, let's get some of those pictures that you have, So that's what we started doing. And we collected a lot of pictures. Didn't know that, But you guys really wanted to know about the atomic. I mean, it was just, what I did was insane. I'm a music major, right? And I wanted to keep the whole thing about the family just having that business go on, right? And then I got married and I had Zen. And then I just kind of continued on. But then I needed to do something with my creativity. I was one of the first singers in this band, and I just wanted to say, well, I don't know if I'll be able to sing, but I sure want to just kind of like, do something with music. And that's how it actually first started. And then as you saw, like these crazy kids, and I was listening, like I was, in the kitchen cooking, and I was listening to K-Rock. And at that time, they were doing a whole lot of punk stuff, and I thought, what? This is really cool, We opened from 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning, and so, Rodney Beanheimer on K-Rock would come on around about 12, and it was perfect time. So I would be sitting there and cooking and listening to punk rock, blasting the radio in the back, and for whatever reason, it just started taking off after those guys started coming in for a photo shoot, and the word got around, and the kids, the punk scene was starting to happen. I really dug it, and all these local kids started making records, and they go, "Hey Nancy, can we just cut this record, and do you think we could throw it in your jukebox?" I go, "Heck yeah, let's just do it." And that's how the word of mouth became. But it really was, for me, those kids that were coming in, they didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. And I'm going, well, you know what? I'll spring a couple fries, like a plate of fries and a couple of Cokes or whatever, and I'll give you a couple quarters to go play some music in the jukebox, all right? And I already had some punk records in there, and they go, whoa, this is really good, So that's how it started. It was mainly, my father used to cater to the Japanese community during New Year's, and he would make free ozoni for everybody that was in the community. That was his way of giving back. And then on the closing day of Atomic was Thanksgiving Day. I didn't go into details about that, but everybody got a free plate of, turkey dinner. Everybody. We didn't care who you were, all right? But mainly we wanted to serve the community. That's how it started. And with that, I just continued to do this. Every Saturday, my daughter and her husband and a lot of volunteers, they worked with the Japanese J-Town activists in solidarity. Every Saturday, feeding the unhoused. Okay? Yeah. And volunteer, they've been doing this for 3 years, and all the volunteers that I see are all young people. They're influenced by trying to help the community. So it just, like a domino effect. And that's the way J-Town should be, just, because I see a lot of nationalists, not only just Japanese American APIs, and nationalists, Japanese nationalists that are unhoused, right? So just knowing that from my dad, and every Saturday I make this big old tray of fried rice. Every Saturday I bring it down there so they can have something to eat. I did this show yesterday, right? Before I got up really early in the morning, made that fried rice for them, before I did that gig. And I says, well, those people at the gig, they got money, they're not hungry, but these people just down the street waiting in line in that hot weather just to have a meal. So, that's where my heart's at. We're really struggling right now, and I'm just trying to make the best out of what I know, how to help the community. And that's really where my heart is at. And this lady right in front of me, Nobuko, she's the one that actually got me going on all of this. You know, all connectedness, you know, just trying to collaborate, be one. That's the whole essence of what Atomic is. No matter, I was a misfit. I don't know about anybody else, but I sure was a misfit. I didn't really connect. Yay for the misfits, right? Right? But I connected with the misfits. And, you know, and Atomic was a place where all the artists and musicians and poets and writers would hang up their things on the wall and would read poetry. I mean, it was amazing during that time. So I just, you know, those are the memories. I'm sorry I'm long-winded on this one.
No, I totally forgot I was moderating this conversation. I think it's the minute once you start talking, it just kind of walks in. I mean, I think what I really loved about what you shared was sort of the philosophy behind like your father's work at the cafe and sort of how we thought about the Atomic Cafe. And I would love to hear, I think for those of us who kind of are like our relationship to these institutions are more as customers, like we don't really get a view into, you know, like what Uncle Ricky is saying about, you know, why he continued making mochi, which is an incredibly labor-intensive process for all these years. So I wonder for Tad and Eryn if you can talk a little bit about how going through this process of making the film changed your perspective on what it means for there to be like a community institution that is taking on all the work that like your father did.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, running a food business is just, shit's hard. Excuse my language, but it's so hard. Having a brick and mortar, it sucks. Uncle Rick gets up at 3 a.m. He used to get up at 3 a.m. every day. And then he wouldn't get home till like 6, and then do it all over again, wake up at 3. And it's just it's so gnarly on the body. But for them, they were just like, but we have to do this. We have to do this for the community, and we just gotta go all out. So what I learned through this process too was just, it was deep. I feel super grateful that they even let me like be there at like 7 a.m. just right before opening. They were like rushing, they're like, Aaron, I was like, I'm in the way, aren't I? I'm like, no, but just to see that whole operation, and it's a lean team. It was only maybe like 3 folks. Only one person really making the mochi manju, which is Uncle Rick. Uncle Bob's just doing the kinako. And also frying the dough balls, that's really important. Don't want to sleep on that. And dealing with customers. But it's so intense, their bodies. And they just really wanted to retire. So for me, it was just like, it's such a labor of love, right? Like these traditional foodways, especially even in Japan, to make handmade teizukuri manju is like, what? We got factories now. That's what they be doing. So it was a trip, and it was really to see them grapple with closing, and especially up to that last day, it was incredibly emotional. But I'm so super grateful that they even shared that with me.
Actually, one thing, you know, when Nancy was talking, I forgot to mention was, you know, when another reason why, you know, Evelyn wanted to do a piece on Atomic Cafe is because it was getting a lot of media at a certain point, you know, but it would really be focusing on kind of really erasing the soul of the story, really erasing the little Tokyo aspect of the story, really, you know, focusing on the punk artists, the famous people, and so I think that was one thing that Evelyn really wanted to do is for us to tell the story. So I think that was, you know, in a broader spectrum, you know, I think the elephant in the room is gentrification of our communities, both in Little Tokyo and SF Japantown. And so I think for me, you know, as a filmmaker, it's like, well, okay, what role can I play in that? And I think in a great way, our community has a big spectrum. We have, you know, activists, we have people to support the small businesses. So for me as a filmmaker, you know, I felt one thing I could do is help preserve the story, right? We can't necessarily prevent businesses from closing, but what we could do is really maintain the story, maintain the history, and therefore, the people who, however the community evolves, we kind of can be able to learn from our past and kind of continue at least the essence, right, of those spaces. So I think for me, it's just a way to contribute in terms of this, and I think really too when the Benkyodo project, actually Sean was one of the first people to text me when Benkyodo was closing down, and I think a couple people texted me. My friend Corey texted me also, and that was actually really, I think that's my goal is to be of service to the community as a filmmaker, and I did feel it's both a responsibility and obligation, but in a great way that people are like, hey, just like Evelyn, like, hey, you got to do this. I think once we knew Benkyodo was going to close, I think more than a handful of people kind of basically said, you should probably do this. But I think at first I was coming in really with this like, oh, gentrification, we're all getting pushed out. But once we really started getting into the story, and I think Ileana Garcia, the editor, who's in the house now, I think it was during one of these editing sessions where she was like, what is in essence the story about? And I think for me at that time, I think again I'm going through this midlife crisis, and but it's really about this shift that's happening, right? I think I was talking to Sean earlier, and it's like we always knew that this point was gonna come, right? It's just like, and I think it's a microcosm of what we're doing in our own families and also as a community nationally, is we always knew that this time would come, right? When things would either close, people would not be here, and I was telling Sean, it's like, to me it seems like fast forward, like we're in the future now, and especially kind of post-COVID, all of a sudden, I'm like the uncle anti-demographic, and all this, because I think earlier, Evelyn was one of the people that would tell me, is like, Little Tokyo's going to change, and now we're here. And so I think it was really good for me to learn Rick and Bobby's story, because it's a little different, right? They just want to rest. They did their job, right? Job well done. And I think for me, I kind of realized it was kind of selfish for me to be like, well, why can't they just continue it on? Why can't someone in the family just and that's because I don't have to do the work. And so I think it was a lot of the gray area. I think I realized in the making of the film, but kind of realized that, at least for the Benkyodo story, was really this metaphor for what I'm going through in my own family, right? The Nisei are gone, the Sansei now, right? We can't necessarily, before it would always be like, oh, they'll take care of it, right? They'll do something. And now, they're slowing down, and really it's on our generation to both, continue on the legacy that they started, but also to kind of redefine what Little Tokyo is going to be in the future for our kids, as well as SF Japantown, as well as I think the big analogies at New Year's, right? I think when I was a kid, all the Nisei, we had all the home cooked oshogatsu plates, right? And then the Sansei did a really good job of like, it was maybe adding some like malasadas and tacos in the mix. And now with my generation, there's a lot more store-bought stuff, and it's kind of like, all right, well, what is that going to look like? Because we can't stop time, we can't stop businesses from closing down, but yet we have the ability to define where our community's going.
Yeah, so with that, we are going to open it up to Q&A in just a minute, and so think about your questions, and then we'll have microphones for you. But just to lead into that, I think, Tad, just to come off of what you were just saying, I'd love to hear from each of you. I think when we talk about our Japantowns, it is often in the context of preservation, right? It's how do we keep things the way that they have been, or bring things back, or memorialize things, which I think has which allows us to preserve a lot of historical memory and community and gathering space, but it also runs the risk of our Japantowns becoming museums, right? Like static museums. So I wonder if, I would love to hear from each of you, and I'd love to start from Eryn, and then Tad, and then Nancy. What actions do you want to pass down? Like, what do you want the art Japantowns to have in our arsenal of things that we can use as tools to maintain this community and grow it? And knowing that it'll change, what do you think is most important for people to do?
Golly, I'm starting first.
Go for it.
All right. Well, yeah, I could say so many things about this, and I feel like we've been talking about this like literally since forever of like, okay, well, what's gonna happen? Like, y'all gotta step up, y'all better step up. And I was like, okay, I'm stepping up, now what? And so what I noticed is, for example, San Francisco. Has the highest density of billionaires per capita. Wild. The disparity is unreal. It does feel currently in San Francisco sometimes like an apocalypse. I mean, just forever. It's really dire right now. And I think being in San Francisco, J-Town, a place that has gone through so many shifts and changes, originally it was like an area of like Eastern Europeans in the early 1880s, the early 1860s, and then it turned into this enclave in 1906 where there was a lot of Japanese Americans that rolled through. And then it also, after internment, it was like the Harlem of the West in so many ways. Maya Angelou was there as well. Then you have redevelopment. And then you have gentrification. So there's all of these, folks are just constantly, everyone's spinal cords and nervous systems are just like crispy, crunchy fried chicken. Like, we're just so fried. It's like we're always trying to like pick up like, okay, how do we survive? How do we keep on going? But how can we also, yes, preservation and yes, fighting these battles, but I feel like because we've always been in this fight or flight mode of trying to hold on to anything and everything, we've lost our capacity to imagine. We've lost our capacity to enjoy, to find, just to think beyond just what is here and what has happened, right? To think beyond these 4 waves of displacement. So I think what I want to see personally is something that I noticed in San Francisco is, a lot of J-Town is not, the folks who were quote unquote J-Town. It's different, like folks are displaced in many different parts of the Bay Area. But there are still folks in J-Town who are living and working there. How do we expand our understanding of what it means to be Japanese American? How do we expand our understanding of what it means to belong to a J-Town community beyond just blood and who you're related to? How can we make sure that we continue to harvest and cultivate an inclusive and expansive and progressive space that has a reverence and celebration of the Japanese American culture and knowing and grounded in that contextual history, while also continuing to evolve and grow with others too. So that's one thing. And I truly think just working in solidarity with the communities that are there, like in San Francisco we have the Black Fillmore, working with folks there and how do we continue to harvest this safe, thriving community. So that's one thing, along with many others. I have many opinions, but yeah, that's just a tidbit.
It's a good opinion. All right, Tad?
I think as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, I'm realizing again going back to whether it's trying to stop time or trying to stop gentrification. I'm realizing too is I think that was the thing too with the Atomic Cafe story. I think once it was gone, it was also now the story itself, the history itself was almost being gentrified, right, and being retold. And so I think it was just a reminder that we also just need to tell our own stories for ourselves, because one, if no one tells it, someone else is going to tell it incorrectly and kind of erase us out of it. But I think what I would want to see people, according to your original question, is that we're all going to be together for a long, long time. And I think things that might seem crazy and urgent at some point 20 years from now might not seem that, I think that the important thing is that I think we can all work together, we can all challenge ourselves, we can all even fight with each other, but it's with this understanding that we're all in it for the long haul. And I think I'm also realizing there's the beauty of our community is the spectrum of it, right? We have the frontline activists, organizers, we have the academics, we have the artists in business, but something that Atomic Cafe and Nancy always remind me is that we have the fun too, right? We have the party spots, and I think that's something. It only works if we're all here together, and I think so for me, and I honestly think you don't realize that beauty until you get older, and until you see multiple generations, until you see friends and family kind of evolve, and I think that's the one thing is just perspective-wise, if we're all really committed to serving the people and serving the community, we have to realize that's a lifelong struggle, and just to work within that context.
All right, Nancy, what do you think you wanna pass down?
As when I was a little kid just walking down in J-Town, I could hear, and some of they used to have little hotels like Sato Hotel and Yako Hotel. These were small little places like in the 50s and the 60s. And you would hear the shamisen, the teachers would be teaching their students shamisen, and I would hear the koto be playing. I could hear people singing minyo, really keeping that tradition going. And in terms of how Atomic still stayed for all those years, that was our third location here. And of course, with gentrification, that's what happened, right? But if anything, how it all started was, let's say I'm gonna go to Mia's flower shop, and then Mia's family would come over to our place. We would keep that kind of a connection to keep the community within, just to keep it building. And that's how it started expanding. And I see that a lot, back then. Now it's just I don't know who they are. I don't know what's happening. We got some heavyweight activists in the house right now that fought for the rights of our people, okay? And I've been passing that down to, to my daughter and to whoever would listen. And it's we need to be who we are trying to preserve this community. And when I did that fundraiser for that 341 North 1st Street, I say, why this little space? Is this all we have? I was just blown away. That kind of made me pissed off. So, I'm a J-Town girl, and I walk here like this is my house, this is my home. And yesterday when I sang American Made, I felt like this is my home, just like you and just like you and me, And I just want to keep it within the community. To expand this a little bit better, East LA, and I know that I want to keep that bridge with East LA, the Boyle Heights community, which we have been, thanks to Nobuko, just just keeping that together, right? Keeping that bridge, we don't want to block that bridge. Also, even in Brownsville, if anybody went down to the station, I saw a mural of B.D. Mason. I used to be in First AME Church. I'm still affiliated with that. And that's the first reverend of the oldest black church in Los Angeles and during Brownsville. And I had no idea of this history, but you captivated that, you kept it. And so that's, for me, I'm a people person. I just like to go out and reach out, because I don't care what color you are, all right? We all bleed the color red, and we all need to eat, sleep, be in peace. We need that for our survival, but we also need to have a communication here, right? In terms of just having an understanding that we're all one. We are all one. We're no different. We're all one. So I'm gonna be an activist and just communicating with other folks. I don't care, even if it's aliens, I don't care. All right? So if anything, I'm doing that with, I'm a drug court counselor. I see them from the depths of hell where they came from, and then once they start cleaning up, I see the real essence of who they really are. That's my goal, and that's the beauty of my job, right? So I'm gonna continue on doing this. Even though I'm retired after this, like 2 weeks in retirement, I'm not quitting. Are you kidding me? In my blood, I just wanna reach out and just help people. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So I'm hearing a lot about connection, I'm hearing a lot about interdependence, and with that, we are going to move into our Q&A. So this is your opportunity to ask some questions of these fine folks. I believe that Joy and Liz have microphones, so if you have a question, raise your hand. I think we probably have time for 2, 3, and then after that, there will be the reception in the lobby when you can ambush our speakers as they're eating. So yes, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Henry.
I was just wondering if we can keep the questions pretty short, just so we can get to as many as possible. Thank you.
Yes, and I will cut you off if you talk too long.
Sounds good. So I want to express my appreciation for the work you've done to memorialize and remember the parts of our community that are fading away. But do you think that we have to just memorialize? I understand totally the idea that we have to understand different ways of being Japanese American, but do you think there's a potential for us to really struggle to preserve the neighborhood, right? That we can have organizations that could fight back and keep businesses like this alive? What do you think are the possibilities for us to really struggle to keep these neighborhoods, this land intact, so we don't just have to imagine new ways of being community? We can preserve the historical way we have been a Japanese American community in the past.
Well, I think that's one thing with Little, that is part of being in Little Tokyo, right? Is fighting to survive and sustain ourselves. I think, we screened Hito Hata a couple months ago, and that was made, in 1980, and it's about fighting against gentrification and redevelopment in Little Tokyo. So we've been doing this from the beginning, at least my whole lifetime. And so to me, I totally agree, it's not about just memorializing, it's about fighting and sustaining what we have. But to me, that is part of Little Tokyo. That goes hand in hand of resistance. And but also too, I think, to celebrate, like to your point, we shouldn't wait till something's closing down to give them their flowers. We should really celebrate. And that's why I wanted to invite the Park's Finest to cater this event, because, going through working on Atomic Cafe, it's like, oh man, I wish I could have lived that moment. This nostalgia, but then realizing that those moments are actually happening now. And so for me, really kind of also just spending a lot of time in historic Filipino town. The Park's Finest is the Atomic Cafe of P-Town, right? It is the Atomic Cafe of my generation and my crew, because we're based in organizing, we're based in cultural and art making, but at the same time we like to get together and have a good time, and that's all part of the community. But I agree with you, it's much more than well, and also too, there are institutions that have been fighting for and protecting our community for generations, and we need to continue that for our generation, and we need to continue that in new ways and evolve those tactics as well.
There's one question up there.
Yeah, I just have a question.
If you want to wait for the microphone, just so you can.
First of all, thank you for coming, and you guys have some fantastic businesses here. One thing that I'm always confused about is what this activism is all about, because first of all, demonizing the wealthy and powerful corporations. I personally have never worked for a poor person. I always worked for a large organization. They're the drivers of the economy. And when our state and local leadership said, it's okay for Toyota to disappear to Plano, it's okay for Nissan to go to Tennessee, Honda will probably be next someday. When you start losing those large businesses, the new Otani falls. Not enough customers go to the Horikawa anymore. Those are places we used to celebrate down here, all of our special occasions. It's a domino effect. Instead of working against the corporations, what are we doing to foster economic development? That's why I don't understand what's going on.
I think those questions should be posed to those corporations instead, right? Like what are they doing to incorporate us? What are they doing to sustain if they see us as a market, what are they gonna do to sustain our community? You know, and so I would propose all those questions that you just asked us to those main corporations, because we've been here, we know what we're about, and they're the ones that have been, you know, trying to use us as either a market or exploitation. And I feel like, you know, I think it shouldn't be black and white, but at the same time, I think those are great questions, but I think those should be posed to the big businesses instead.
Yeah, I appreciate, that's a juicy question. It's a real juicy one. That's a juicy one, but I also feel, for example, like in San Francisco, like the folks who used to own the mall was the Kintetsu business, and they dipped a minute ago. And now we have this new corporation that owns a lot of J-Town. They're about to dip. And then we see in San Francisco's downtown, for example, everyone is leaving. Those corporations are leaving the city. Maybe I'm naive, but I honestly feel like people are the ones that create culture. People are the ones that create value to the community, not these corporations. So when you house folks, when folks are feeling resourced and have a place to live and they can connect with one another, that's where you get the culture. That's where you get what the corporations want. And then they roll in, they're like, oh, we missed the party. Can we roll in and buy this building? And then it's like, nah, it's the people that make it. But great juicy question though, to be continued, I feel.
No, but again, not to make it so black and white, because I think that those fundings are very valuable, and we're all benefiting from, you know, funding from those corporations.
Yeah.
But I think again, it's working together, and it's kind of understanding the priorities of what that money will be used for. So again, I think funding is very necessary. I personally benefited from funding for both my career and my films. So I agree that it's not demonizing as much as we need to better work together. And my perspective is that I think it's about who's kind of initiating the priorities and who's kind of demanding what from who. But I agree that you know, it shouldn't be seen as this black and white. There's a lot of, if we're gonna continue, I think we need to improve in terms of those relationships. But I think it shouldn't be necessarily based, the question shouldn't be posed to us as much as, you know, it should be a mutual discussion.
Any other questions?
More of a comment. Hi, my name is Philip Hirose. Fantastic documentaries, love food culture, food history, personal history, family history, community history that is not of the past but of the present. I wanted to just note some observations of the Benkyodo film, but also stories that I hear about the atomic because I never got to experience it myself. One thing that comes to mind is the generosity that existed at the atomic, because I would hear stories about people receiving meals who didn't have the means. I think we romanticize so much about the successful Japanese American history that have to do with capital, in which we forget about those who have struggled or those who have immigrated. And when I think of philanthropy, it comes in those forms. I'm not going to specify who, but I hear about people who received meals from the atomic who simply didn't have the means. For Benkyodo, it came from the line of him not wanting to raise prices because he felt that it was the spirit of Benkyodo. That's the generosity of not increasing prices double simply for their, I feel like, enjoyment. And unfortunately, because of that, it's like it is in economic terms, it's unsustainable. But the community and so many I feel like, have benefited from that. I think it's very difficult to raise prices, and I can understand that, personal experience, but I hope that people can see the generosity of these businesses, but these individuals who make these conscious decisions.
Joy, how are we doing on time?
We're about at time. I know we.
All right,
we don't
so-
wanna get close.
With that, I do just want to close out by thanking our panelists very much for being part of this debate because it's happening. I'd like to add, I think that Little Tokyo has been in a moment of transition for quite a long time. I think about how I was raised by a lot of the folks in this room who told me stories about displacement in different ways, and the ways that businesses exist or cease to exist, the ways that like I think back to stories of like the Sun Building, which was housing, which was then bought by the Kajima Corporation, who then took it over and evicted all the residents. I think about when I was in college, how we faced JVP and Weathercorp getting bought by corporations who were threatening the closing of a lot of businesses as well. And so as we are thinking about the future of Little Tokyo, I do think that focusing the questions on our people, thinking about what we need as people, thinking about what our businesses need and how we can resource them, those are the questions that I hope that we're all asking, and I think that watching these films is very clear. It may not be about demonizing a corporation, but it is about looking at what we need and starting from the people. So I hope that as we go outside today, I hope that as you are eating food, I hope that as you're enjoying, you're taking this time to meet everyone else who's in this room. I hope that you're making those connections. I hope that we were able to strengthen ourselves. To what Nancy said, everyone knew each other, and I hope that we continue to know each other, and through that we can fight for things that we care about and ensure that we're building Japantowns, no matter where on this continent they are, that we're proud of and that we feel like we can be a part of in the future. So with that, thank you so much, and with that I'm going to pass over to Joy.